So quarantine was only supposed to last 2 weeks, but now it's been pushed back to April 30th, the end of this month. And like last week, it is a similar topic, talking about coronavirus and how it's affecting the economy and the world around us, and if it is worth it or not to just like kind of weighing the pros and cons. So since lockdown, unemployment has gone up to 6.6 million, and Wall Street Journal predicts that it could go up to 20 million by Easter week, which is next week. So if the economy does not open itself back up, the economy is not going to be doing good, and it's not going to be good for any of us. There's been a $2 trillion unemployment insurance relief bill, which is basically going to the American people to help them with their unemployment, their bills, their everything. It's just, it just helps the unemployed American people. It's scary to think that some American people may be taking advantage of this bill. Like, if this bill is causing them to make more money than they would actually working, like, they don't have incentive to go back to work. Like, why would you go back to work if you're making more money doing nothing off of this $2 trillion unemployment insurance rather than going back to your job? Hopefully we figure something out, but if not, then it's kind of sad because Donald Trump has been doing so much work and unemployment's been the lowest it's ever been, and now it's going back up because of coronavirus. So coronavirus. We've been choosing unemployment and the economy going down over the fear that a lot of people are gonna die over coronavirus. If we look at the numbers, 99% out of 100 people who succumb and pass away due to coronavirus, they have pre-existing conditions. Some of the pre-existing conditions includes respiratory illness, cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And 94% of the people who have coronavirus or have been diagnosed with coronavirus are over the age of 45. So it's a pretty targeted group. Like, for the majority of people who have it, you have to be over the age of 45 and typically have pre-existing health conditions. Anyone who is like outside of that group is like an outlier of the corona fatality. So if studies show that it is such a targeted group of people, why are we as an entire country slowing down all our lives, stopping everything, and potentially harming our economy and the lives of so many American peoples? Let's take New York for example. We were told that there would be 61,000 hospitalized in New York City, but in reality there are only 14,400 hospitalized, which is 25% of what they had predicted. That being said, why aren't we adjusting to the numbers that have actually come out? Not as many people are being affected as we thought were going to be affected. In New York City, out of 1,400 deaths, only 18 of those deaths did not have any pre-existing conditions. So it really is like a targeted group. The majority of people who succumb to coronavirus have pre-existing health conditions and are older people. But if you are in excellent health and are an older person, it's still possible for you to overcome. There is this 103-year-old World War II vet named William Lapches, and he was able to go home after having coronavirus. Apparently, William Lapches also survived the Spanish flu. He's 103. And he's still alive. So even if you are older, if you have good health, then you'll be fine. So it doesn't matter how old you are. There's still a possibility that you could beat coronavirus. But we have to look at the statistics and the numbers that are in. And with all the information that we've gathered so far, it's not affecting as many people as we thought it would affect. The targeted group is over the age of 45. And they have underlying health conditions. This 103-year-old man was able to beat it. He's fine. He's literally like alive right now. He just turned 104. And if we look at the amount of deaths that flu and pneumonia has racked up just this year alone, the amount of lives that flu and pneumonia has claimed so far this year is 83,780 deaths. Meanwhile, coronavirus has claimed a little over 10,800 lives. That's a big number, but it's still not as big as the flu and pneumonia, which has been around for forever. So that being said, with all of that in, are we really going to put the livelihoods of American citizens and America as a whole on the line because of the risk of coronavirus? You gotta pick your poison. Are you going to choose the 11,000 affected by coronavirus versus the millions of people who will be unemployed and cause our stock market to crash, and just America as a whole country is going to suffer? And just think of all the people who are just going to get so depressed and take their own lives, just like off themselves, because they feel like they have nowhere else to go because they've lost their small business, they've lost their livelihood. It's just gonna be so bad. I can't imagine being like living through the Great Depression. That just sounds so terrible. So with all the numbers in, we should all realize that maybe we're being a little bit hysterical about this whole thing, and we should come up with a new solution. Otherwise, we'll all suffer in the future.
So clearly we are in tough times, and there really is no real true solution that can solve everything. We only really have two options here. Number one being we keep America quarantined and everyone stays inside like we have been to slow the spread of the virus until the virus disappears, which could take who knows how long. Or we reopen America, let this coronavirus blow through and keep the economy going so that we don't face an economic disaster like the Great Depression. Either way, whether you choose one or the other, there's still going to be bad drawbacks from both. If we stay quarantined, the economy itself and all of America gets hit, because you have the working class Americans that can't work because their job is going out of business or nobody's visiting their family-owned shop. And as a result, you have millions of people filing for unemployment. In fact, this week has been the largest unemployment spike in history, where 6.6 million people all filed for unemployment in the span of 1 week. If it continues, the number will continue to rise.
Last week, we had record-breaking numbers with over 3 million people filing. That number has surged to over 6 million this week. So for people who are saying, we already saw the worst, now loans are coming, people aren't losing their jobs, that's just not the case. 6 million, that's a massive number. Before we saw 3 million last week, the week before, to put it in perspective, was just 200,000. So I know in the last week, you and I have seen tons of people writing in saying, I'm desperate to file an unemployment claim. The phone lines are busy. The websites aren't working. Here's why. It's not that people aren't eligible, because we know the new CARE Act has expanded unemployment to include so many more people. But the reason those claims aren't going through yet, just think about that, Hoda. 6 million people in the last week, and I don't want to make you completely worried, but the St. Louis Fed has said it could be even more than that. They worry that unemployment could spike to 31% in this country. In the Great Depression, it was around 25%. And even when we come back, I do want you to just think about this. It's going to change the way we live. The restaurant industry has lost millions of jobs in the last few weeks. And when we come back, social distancing will still be in place. Once you've got 6 feet between every customer, every table, you're going to be taking half the tables out of restaurants, and you won't be seeing a crowded bar in the foreseeable future.
In the other option, where we open the country back up, the virus will spread faster, more people will get infected, and it will be more chaos for the hospitals and people being hospitalized. So we are in a dilemma here, and this is no easy decision to make. But like we've been saying, you have a quarter of America that is going to fall into poverty due to the economic collapse and nobody visiting stores and quarantine being prolonged. Or you have the small percentage of people who will get the coronavirus. And from that percentage, a even smaller, tiny margin of people who might die from the coronavirus. We're talking about the livelihood of a quarter of America versus the health of the people suffering from corona. Clearly, one group is bigger than the other, but as we are now in lockdown, we cannot survive. America cannot survive in this condition. We are faced with a true dilemma here, where we must pick the harder but better option, which is to open up America, as opposed to the easier but worse option, which is keep America quarantined. In the ancient times, when the Israelites were enslaved by the Egyptians, they too had to make a tough choice. They could either escape from Egypt and take this 40-year trek to the Promised Land, or they could stay in Egypt and live out the rest of their lives as slaves, which might be comfortable for some people, but is clearly the wrong option. Imagine if the Israelites didn't follow Moses into the Promised Land, and they all decided to stay comfortable as slaves. That's what a lot of Israelites wanted to do during the trek as well. They were complaining, saying we should turn back to Egypt, because the trek was harder than the lives they had as slaves. So many of them wanted to turn back. They were faced with a dilemma, just like we were. What we have to do, we have to think about the sake of the majority rather than the sake of the minority. If Moses listened to those few people that were complaining about trekking, Jesus probably would never have came, and they would have never reached the Promised Land, and it could have been another couple hundred years in slavery if they decided to go with the easier option, more comfortable option, instead of making it to the Promised Land. Another hard decision was after Jesus' crucifixion. There are many Christians that were being hunted down for believing in Christianity. For 400 years, Christians had to put up with the fear of being murdered just for believing in Christianity. There is the easier option, which is to just stop believing or say that you don't believe in Christianity or the Lord so that your life may be spared. Or you keep believing in Jesus and keep believing in Christianity and you wait out the 400 years. If everyone decided to go for the easier option, Christianity would not be around today. It is because the people who stuck around for the harder option, who kept on believing despite them being hunted down, those people are the reason why Christianity is here today. We need to think about the future in these circumstances, whether it be the future of the people who are going to get corona or the future of America's economy as a whole. I know it's a tough decision, but it's one that we have to make in order to save the livelihood of America itself. We have to be like the people before us that chose the harder decision, tough through it, and as a result, we live a better life.
Ultimately, the goal is to ease the guidelines and open things up to very large sections of our country as we near the end of our historic battle with the invisible enemy. I said earlier today that I hope we can do this by Easter. I think that would be a great thing for our country, and we're all working very hard to make that a reality.
So, the better option here, in our case, would be to open up the country. End this quarantine, at least by Easter, so that businesses may thrive again and you have people working again, so that the unemployment rate drops again to where it was before. It is a tough decision to be sure, but it is one that we must make and one that we must make together as a country. And that's basically all it boils down to.